Kia ora. My name is Joseph Doherty, and I'm here talking to you today about the Regulatory Standards Bill. This bill is open for submission currently, closing on Monday, June 23rd at 1 p.m. Not far away. This bill is extremely dangerous, and I'm urging everybody who hasn't already done so to consider writing a submission. And I'm going to provide you with some information about its problems and some links for further helpful info if you wish to listen. The bill, according to law professor Jonathan Boston, is the everything bill. It will sit above other legislation, and against it, all other laws must be measured to see whether they fit. It is no less than a regulatory constitution, said University of Otago law professor Andrew Geddes. It will run our society, and it will ruin it. Melanie Nelson, writing in the newsletter E-Tangata, said that the RSB will sit above all other laws and above the Treaty of Waitangi. A view echoed by Dr. Carwyn Jones, who said, giving evidence at the Waitangi Tribunal, the principles of the RSB are anti-treaty principles, and they would occupy the position of constitutionally superior law. The Treaty of Waitangi is our foundational legal document. Its existence enables us to create other laws. If it is to be disregarded, then do we, and especially Māori, have the right to disregard New Zealand's laws? Maybe so. Now, this proposed bill is designed to do two things. One, completely sideline the treaty. Two, completely sideline environmental and social interests in the management of our land and its resources. So potentially it is goodbye protection of the environment and goodbye protection of community interests, especially Māori interests. 4 different environmental groups got together to issue a joint letter to the PM opposing this bill. Wildlife Fund for Nature New Zealand, the Environmental Defence Society, Forest and Bird, and Greenpeace Aotearoa. And they said, the RSB is an unprecedented threat to environmental protection, climate action, and to the country's constitutional and democratic foundations. Serious stuff. And they warn that the bill's going to create a dangerous precedent where governments are expected to compensate companies if new environmental protections interfere with their property, effectively turning the polluter pays principle on its head. Instead, we get to pay the polluter. An Otago University professor, Dr. Michael Baker, said similar things in the ODT, the Otago Daily Times, recently. Quote, the takings and impairment principle in the bill allows companies to seek compensation if any future legislation causes them to lose money. This is an idle speculation. When the Australian government required tobacco companies to put their tobacco products in plain paper wrapping, the tobacco companies sued them. When the government of El Salvador tried to protect their last remaining clean river, which had a mining operation in its headwaters, the mining operation sued them. Professor Baker went on to say, this bill will make it much more difficult for the government to protect public health, e.g. through restrictions on unhealthy food, unhealthy drink, or through provisions to provide us with clean air. I would describe that as a seriously undesirable outcome. Now back to the 4 different environment groups' letter to the PM. In that, they also warn that the bill will undermine environmental protections by prioritising private property rights and individual freedom over the health of nature and public interests. So my statement about the ending of environmental protection is not entirely hyperbolic, because if a law requires that certain things be taken into account, as here with the Regulatory Standards Bill's principles, but doesn't mention other considerations like protecting public land or protecting clean air and clean water at all, or incorporating the Treaty of Waitangi, then those things are not to be taken into consideration. And the bill goes further. The bill sets out how and why government agencies actually have to justify any efforts to protect things that are not in those principles. And the Minister of Regulation, David Seymour, can use various different mechanisms at his disposal to challenge those attempts. And the principles in this bill reflect only ACT Party values, not the wider public's. And also, some of our rights that are safeguarded in the Bill of Rights may not be safeguarded because they're not mentioned in the principles. Professor Geddes described the principles in the bill as merely selective and actually deeply contestable. In other words, they do not include a lot of values that most people in Aotearoa, New Zealand, hold, such as a desire to have clean air and water. And they do include many principles or values that people actually disagree with. And there are some other problems with this proposed legislation. For a start, it's bad law. Because in addition to disregarding the constitutional significance of the Treaty of Waitangi and not aligning with the Bill of Rights, according to the Ministry of Justice, no less, it may actually make the issues that we have with creating good legislation even worse, said Professor Geddes. Because, for example, it only confers the right to object to a piece of future government regulation to those whom are deemed directly and materially affected. This is a high bar. For example, if you like walking in a particular public space, which becomes polluted or degraded, are you directly or materially affected? Probably not. So you can't object. You have no recourse to object. Iwi and Hapu with kaitiakitanga interest in that space probably also may not meet the threshold to enable them to object, according to Melanie Nelson. This is criminal. Removing the possibility of people with generations of lineage to that place, to their rohe, from looking after it, so that the government can allow companies from wherever to more easily make more money today, while foreclosing the potentiality for local people to sustain themselves forever, is deeply intolerable. Secondly, the bill doesn't require that the best available evidence be utilised in decision making. They can ignore it, they can disregard it, they can even ask it not to be presented. If this bill is passed in its current form and this government is re-elected and entrenches these changes for years, untold damage can be done to our society and to our environment and to what social cohesion we have left. Now, some members of the other coalition parties in the government are not happy with aspects of this bill, so any submissions emphasising its problems could tilt them to change it. So please consider doing so. I'm going to provide a link to the submission process below and also to the excellent Environmental Defence Society's media release, which provides some guidance if you want it. Cheers.